that's far more preferable than VCs. VCs will take your money, they'll dump it straight away. I mean, that's basically what it comes down to, and we don't want that for the community. And we're looking at options as to how we can perhaps drive some interest back into the Polkadot community and drive volume back into the Polkadot community. So basically asking for, up to $500,000. And the other parachain teams are facing exactly the same problem. You end up with this situation where maybe you just don't have enough money to just throw at the exchanges and get yourself listed. And another exchange lists that coin, they will take those coins and they will sell them on that other exchange.
Hello and welcome to another video, and this is CryptoChain, the channel that brings you crypto news, reviews, tutorials, and interviews. And my name is Claudio, and joining me today is Chris and Toufiq, who are co-founders of Totem Accounting, also known as Kapex. This is the second time they've been on this channel, so we did an interview quite a while back, but now we're going to hear more from them regarding the latest updates, what's been going on. I hope you'll find this interesting, so make sure to stay tuned till the end. I will also be adding timestamps to this video, so if you're only interested in certain segments, you can go ahead and just check those out. So thank you, and let's kick things off. Chris, welcome. I really appreciate you coming on. Toufiq as well. No, Toufiq unfortunately can be on camera, but that's okay. Chris, how are things? How have you been doing with Totem so far?
Yeah, they're great actually. Thanks very much for having us on. It was a bit of a surprise to win the community vote.
Yeah, congratulations, by the way. Yeah, congratulations. Yeah, this is one of the reasons that they've made it here. It's not that I wouldn't have wanted to have them on, but it's just what I try to do is I try to do a couple of interviews a month, and I try to basically create polls and see what the community want, who the community want to bring on. So it's really nice to see that the Totem community is really strong and you got a lot of votes. So congratulations.
Yeah, great. Thanks
so
very much.
Tell us about Totem. Maybe like if somebody is new and they don't have time to watch the initial video that we did, maybe just quickly summarize what Totem Accounting is about, please.
Okay, so Totem Accounting is an entirely new concept in accounting. It's a notion of peer-to-peer accounting. So traditional accounting systems, they just exist within themselves and they're kind of focused on by companies internally. But of course, they exist all over the place, and those accounting systems don't talk to each other. So our notion of peer-to-peer accounting is essentially that those accounting systems should talk to each other, and it brings a huge amount of efficiencies to the way in which we deal with information as it passes between companies and between customers or whatever. So that's a fundamental sort of concept behind Totem. And it's actually only possible if you use a blockchain. So to do this in any other way with traditional software, you can't do it because they generally have a walled garden around that software, and therefore you can't really talk to other systems kind of independently anywhere in the world in real time like you can with a blockchain. So some of the properties that you have with a blockchain naturally lend it to this totally new concept of peer-to-peer accounting.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Thank you for that explanation. Now, let me ask you about the parachains. So when we last spoke, you weren't actually a parachain at the time. You were planning to. I think you might have been a solo chain, if I remember correctly, or even a parathread at the time. So congratulations on winning. I know it's been a while. You've also distributed the rewards, which are called Kapex. So why did you choose the name Kapex?
Well, it's actually Capex, which is a kind of play on words, because capital expenditure is often shortened to Capex in the accounting world. So it's that's basically where the name came from. And what we were seeing was a lot of competition around the name Totem. And if you want to have a brand that kind of stands out, you need to have a brand that's kind of unique in the space. So that was one of the other reasons why we decided to rebrand the parachain, at least the Capex parachain. And yes, actually, we won the slot last year at the end of June. We were slot number 21 on Polkadot, and we sort of embarked on this process of looking at going through the process of distributing, and we discovered, to our shock, that we'd made a small mistake in the code that we'd uploaded to Polkadot. And I think a lot of teams have done something very similar. Ours was particular to us, and we had to go through quite a painful referendum process to put it right on Polkadot. And that took us basically the best part of 70 days. So we kind of discovered it sometime in August of last year, and then it took us 70 days to go through the whole process once we'd prepared it all and checked it with the parity team before we could actually get that fixed through. And then as soon as that went through at the beginning of January, we almost immediately distributed our coins, because we knew that our community was at that point kind of wanting to know why everything had stopped from our perspective. But in fact, it hadn't. We'd been working hard in the background to deal with those issues and also build out our infrastructure, make it a bit more reliable and a bit more stable. So that all came together at the beginning of January. And we were able to upgrade our chain shortly afterwards and begin the process now of planning and implementing the upgrades that we've got to come in the subsequent months and the rest of the year, really.
It's good to hear. And so what are the plans now going forward? Like right now, the Totem Accounting application is usable, so people can actually set up a profile on there. I know that you were able to do that even before when you were on testnet, right? People could have set up a profile, they could have tested things out to get a feel of what's to come. But like, what's different now that you are on that you are a parachain?
So the application itself that you referred to was actually on our testnet, which is coming to the end of its life now. It was a very old version of Substrate. There are problems in keeping it sort of running because it hasn't been upgraded from then. So we're actually in the process of doing that migration right now. So although people can make transactions directly on the Kapex parachain using something like Polkadot.js or a Nova wallet or Talisman, I believe there are a number of wallets out there that are supported. The actual sort of application that you refer to is being migrated as we speak into a version that we can use on the Kapex parachain. And because that was a test net where pretty much anything can go, and the coins didn't have any value, there was no kind of intended value for that test net, we need to go through a process of just making sure that this application that we put on our production chain is secure and safe in ways that we didn't have to do before. So that there is a lot of let's say conservative development that has to take place in this year in 2023. Plus, we are adding, of course, other features and functionality, but we're basically ensuring that each of the parts that we go live on our Kapex parachain has been sort of thoroughly tested and looked at from a security point of view as well.
Okay, that's fair. And let's talk about the utility of the Kapex coin. So what role is that going to play when it comes to usage in the application?
So the Kapex coin is a slightly different concept to how we'd started off. So we originally started off saying that we were going to have a value calculated algorithmically for the coin in the network itself. And again, this is something that's new to accounting. Accounting software doesn't traditionally do this. Won't go into the details of it, but basically it's a new concept. Because you've got a cryptocurrency, you can do some things that you couldn't do previously. And in doing that sort of whole process, we realized that this is going to be quite a hard sell. And what people are looking for, if they're looking to back a certain project, is they're actually looking to get something in return. And the Kapex coin is slightly different. It's a market price coin. It's not listed yet, but it will be listed shortly. And this gives at least the community some incentive to back our project. And that was quite successful, obviously, because the community backed our project to the point of winning a parachain slot, obviously in exchange for these coins on our network, which should have value. The other part of that is, of course, that we can participate in the parachain community as a whole. I don't know if you're aware, but there's going to be a DEX on State Mint coming up. We don't know when that's going to be delivered. Dot swap, I think it's going to be called.
Is it going to be called dot swap? Oh, okay. Yeah.
So,
they initially said state swap, but I don't know if they changed.
That's right. But I think there was some conflict or some discussion as to whether that was appropriate. But dot swap is going to be the name, as far as I understand. And this will allow our coin, of course, to participate in those mechanisms as well. So whether it's liquidity pools or just straight exchange for USDT or DOT, that will give an outlet for the current holders of Kapex. We don't know when that's going to go live because, of course, we're dependent a little bit on the development in the statement ecosystem.
Okay, that's fair enough. Cool. Toufiq, is there anything you'd like to add? Because I forgot to ask you if there's anything you'd like to share.
No, I think Chris covered it all. We have been actually quite developing, although even though it seems like things haven't moved along, but yeah, there are quite a lot of things to be done. A lot of, the runtimes migrated. I mean, there are quite a lot of things to be done. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Moving on to the next topic now with regards to the actual platform itself and like integrations. So I know that we've been discussing with another member who from the community who happens to run a validator and has created a proposal on Kusama Open Governance recently to try and get funding for a portfolio software which also manages accounting for tax reporting purposes. And I know that you are suggesting that would be like the perfect fit for building on top of Totem. So when you are saying that, like how exactly can a developer build on top of Totem? So can they just like create a UI and then use the the Totem parachain, or what do they actually, how can they use Totem basically to develop? If you can just explain, maybe not in a very technical way, just in case there are people that don't understand the concept.
Yeah, so that conversation was quite active, wasn't it? I think it's a proposal in the Kusama environment.
Yeah.
I think there's a fundamental difference between what we're doing and what that proposal was. So essentially, if I can summarize that proposal, it was taking the information from various chains and manipulating it in such a way as it could be introduced into traditional accounting software.
Correct.
So that process of taking something that has already happened, manipulating it and putting it in traditional accounting software is just a normal process in accounting terms. So if you think about it, you've got a shop and you run your shop. At the end of the day, you calculate how much money you've got in that, how much money you've taken that day, and then you put it in your accounting system. That's basically the same process. So that particular proposal was not necessarily doing anything different than is currently done. It's just focusing on the the crypto environment, if you like, or the parachain environment for the tokens that exist there. And I've seen a number of proposals. There was another one by a company called Integral as well, basically doing exactly the same thing. So taking crypto information and putting it in an accounting system. But what's different about what we do is we consider the counterparty, the other party in any transaction, in fact. So that's the big thing that's kind of different. So if people were to build on Polkadot, on our Kapex parachain, they would essentially need to be considering both parts of the transaction. And our chain actually does that part for them. So whenever they enter some information, there's always a counterparty involved. And the recipes that we have in our system itself are able to cope with various different types of scenarios. So people could build on top of Totem whatever UI they want to have, as long as it adheres to the rules that we have, which is essentially you always have to consider the counterparty. And the reason for that is obviously this peer-to-peer nature of the accounting application that we've built, which is fundamentally different from a normal accounting application. And ultimately what that means is that both parties get their accounts updated. So really it's a race to whoever posts the invoice first, if you like. They will be posting it for both parties at the same time, essentially. Yes, we would like people to come and help us build that application, and we will have a grants program that we'll be launching once we're listed and we can have some value to our coin. We will be launching a grants program to encourage people to do that kind of building on top of our application itself.
Fair enough. Okay, cool. Thank you for the explanation. Now, I do need to ask you regarding the parachain. So you have chosen to go to Polkadot directly. Can I ask why not Kusama? Why not have a canary network? I mean, what is the reason behind it?
Well, when we actually gave our first presentation in April 2019, I think it was, if I'm correct, we put up a slide that basically said that we were going to be building on Polkadot. And that was always our intention. So when Kusama came along, and we saw a lot of teams actually building on Kusama first, it kind of begged the question, well, why would you want to build on Kusama exactly the same thing that you would also build on Polkadot?
Yeah.
And if the answer to that question was, well, just so that you can test to see if it works, well, that's what our test network is for. So there are kind of, you know, it didn't really seem to serve an additional purpose for us. And at the end of the day, Polkadot is the flagship environment for the entire community. So to get visibility on Polkadot was really important for us, particularly as we're, let's say, one of the few teams probably in the entire crypto space that really doesn't get any kind of visibility because people find it very difficult to wrap their heads around a new concept of peer-to-peer accounting. So, you know, we wanted to sort of go with Polkadot because it gave us the visibility that we needed.
Yeah, makes sense. Absolutely. And I mean, what's your take on the Canary network? Like, do you see value in having Kusama? Not necessarily. I mean, Kusama is necessary because we know that all the future upgrades coming to Polkadot first get deployed on Kusama and tested there. Hence, Kusama open governance right now, which is yet to be deployed on Polkadot. But do you see value in Canary network parachains, for example, like Moonriver, like Shiden, and like other ones that we've seen, you know, of those major networks that are proven to be quite successful on Polkadot, such as Moonbeam and Astar, for example? I mean, do you see value in having that Canary network, or could this just be something that you could use, that you could test on Rococo rather than have the, ultimately it is a staging environment, isn't it? Because it's like in production, except it doesn't have the same important data as the production data should be. It's kind of like staging.
I see it as kind of competing with yourself. You know, there's been a lot of interest in Kusama as an ecosystem, especially, I suppose, for people that are trying out new things and want to do it in an ecosystem where it's allowed to fail or it's allowed to break. I suppose it would be potentially allowed to break Kusama, but because chaos is what it's all about there. But I think, you know, for us, keeping a network running on Kusama and a network running on Polkadot and a staging network that we have, the private staging network, and a development environment, it just seemed to be kind of overkill for what we needed. Ultimately, we will probably have a replacement network for our previous, like a public test network, as we had previously, but very similar to the Kapex network, where people can try and play around, and that'll have the most cutting edge UI attached to it, for example. But we don't need to have that necessarily on Kusama. So for us, it didn't really serve a purpose. But I suppose, you know, to be able to answer that question properly, you'd have to ask the other teams why they chose that and why they supported that environment.
Yeah. No, it's one of the questions I do ask, actually, but I always like to hear other people's opinions. You know, the more people that share their opinions, the better. But yeah, most of the feedback I got was that it all depends on the use case at the end of the day. It's like you were saying, I mean, for your specific use case, there is no need for a canary. And if you were to do that, it would actually seem like a red flag maybe in many people's eyes, right? It's like, what's the point?
It would dilute our coin completely, because you'd have two sets of coins to deal with. And for our community, who hold actually the majority of coins at the moment, you know, they would be pretty much diluted by another network. I think Toufiq's got strong feelings about this as well.
Yeah, I really don't like the idea that there will be two different coins from the same project, both of them being on the market. It's I mean, I don't want to bad name anything, but I really don't like it. In our case, the core difference, even though we will have two different coins, they are essentially one single coin, because Kapex will become Totem. So for
Okay.
our case, we don't. It's going to be one coin ultimately. But in the all dual chain cases, they have two different coins, and that confuses a lot of people, as well as there may be some ways some people may like it because it gives them a financial opportunity. But ultimately, from the engineering perspective or software development perspective, I don't see any value in there. I mean, because you have development, network, you have staging network, as Chris mentioned, public testnet, as well as you have opportunity to join the Rococo network. That's why we didn't see the value in joining, Kusama first.
Yeah, and it's not bulletproof either, is it? I mean, we have seen a situation in the Polkadot ecosystem where it did get impacted, right? Even if they had a canary network, so it doesn't mean that it's bulletproof. It doesn't mean that you're not going to deploy that bug on your main network. You know, it could still happen. I mean, it's when it comes to code, it's always prone to bugs, isn't it? No matter how much you test.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think it has a lot of value for Polkadot itself, because I think, there are a couple of teams that suffered some issues on Kusama. And I think there's an ongoing issue with the treasury itself, where there are a lot of, let's say, treasury applications now. I think it was mentioned on one of the forums recently that there's quite a lot of treasury applications, and it's beginning to drain the Kusama treasury. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I would say that the treasury is intended to spend all its money. That's the purpose for it. But is that considered an attack vector? I don't know. It's how it from that perspective, it's good for Polkadot, because you will see things happening in Kusama first before they affect Polkadot, without necessarily affecting the parachain teams, but just,
Is there any contact between Totem, Kapex, and the Big Four so that they can find out about the development of the project and evaluate the potential of implementing it in their work system? So that's a question from a community member.
So I think what they mean by Big Four there is the Big Four audit firms in the US. So people like EY. Well, we don't really have any direct contact with them. And I think at some point we will be able to do that, but we're quite a small team. So we're quite spread thinly on the ground, if you like. We have a lot of things that we're concentrating on that are focused around at least bringing our coin to market, which is like super important at the moment. So discussions about sort of integration with other existing systems is sort of a bit further down the line. But also it's always going to be a hard sell when you talk about trying to sell your application to a large firm. Well, first of all, you have to go through the process of being a preferred supplier and all of that stuff that happens there, and then you have to convince them to change perhaps license agreements that they have with large companies already, like SAP or Oracle. Are they realistically ever going to change those licensing agreements? And how long will it take you to get there to even begin to have a pilot program with them? We could be talking sort of 5 years down the line. So I've always taken the view that we just need to build first. And once we show exactly what it is that we're building, which is as I say, I keep saying, it's fundamentally different to any other accounting software that's out there. When people actually see what happens when you connect those ledgers together and they see the efficiencies, it will almost sell itself. So it's not something I'm afraid of at this point, that we're not necessarily making the right connections with the big enterprises that already exist. I think they will come to us when they see the efficiencies that it will bring.
Talking about Kapex, are you looking at any exchange listings anytime soon? Have you been discussing with any exchanges? I understand you can't give names because of NDA, which is normal, but have you been in talks with any of them, or are you holding off from that for now?
No, we've been in talks since we actually won a slot, and this is quite a difficult subject to deal with. Again, I won't name names, but there are some exchanges that took part in our crowd loan that are holding us to ransom. And I don't think it's a sort of secret to say that parachain, within the parachain leadership community, we've been discussing the issues that this is facing us, because it's a big concern. If parachains can't get listed because the centralized exchanges are holding them to ransom, basically asking for, you know, up to $500,000 to list their coin when they've already taken part in the crowd loan, then that becomes problematic. And there are, of course, other exchanges like Kraken and Binance that don't charge for listing the coins, but there are heavy due diligence processes that you need to go through. So the process is much longer and much slower. And, you know, small parachain teams that start are going to be faced with very similar problems to us. If like us, you don't raise VC money because you're community focused and you think that VC is essentially centralizing control in the hands of the very wealthy already, which is what we believe, then you don't really want to go with VC money. You want to be able to raise money from the community, but also you're kind of reliant on getting listed at that point as well. So that you can have value in your coin and you can use your coin to fund your development going forward, which is the approach that we took. But that's a kind of catch-22, because you end up with this situation where maybe you just don't have enough money to just throw at the exchanges and get yourself listed, like some shit coins that are out there. But at the same time, you're doing honest work and you actually want to have your coin listed. You want to have it validated by the market in general. So it's, you know, there are difficulties, and it's not that we're not talking to exchanges. Of course, we're talking to them. There are some difficulties with some exchanges. Other ones, the process takes a lot longer. And the other parachain teams are facing exactly the same problem, which is essentially why Statement came along and said, okay, let's build a DEX. Let's just avoid having to deal with centralized exchanges. We can do it internally. We have the mechanisms to transfer coins between chains, so let's use it.
Yeah, I was going to say that's really sad to hear, because that's the second case I hear of that happening. I mean, the Centrifuge team have faced exactly the same problem with their Canary network Altair. I mean, it has been supported on a specific, like the crowd loan has been supported in 2021 on a specific exchange, and nobody who has contributed from that exchange has gotten their coins, nor did the exchange list the coin. And the team have gone back and forth multiple times asking, like, what's the status? What's the status? So now that you're telling me they're actually charging you, even though they said we agree to support this crowd loan, is absolutely insane. It's like, wow, like really, really greedy. Like, were they not, why couldn't they just say that from the beginning? Like when they said we are willing to support your crowd loan, why couldn't they say these are the terms you will have to pay? And then you could have said, that's fine, I'm not gonna list.
Well, this is very common, and we've been approached by other exchanges as well. Some of them are much lower down on the pecking order, and they've said things like, we'll list you for free, but then they want a marketing budget, which is, you know, absolutely, they're not listing us for free. They just want money from us for free, and they want it for some ICO token launch type thing, which again, you know, I would say no to that, because we've got our own coin. We don't need to do it. This is a bit the state of the centralized market at the moment. And we've seen that also with the obviously following FTX is a big problem. So, but what we suspect, and yeah, I'm just throwing this out here, I don't mind airing it either, is that we think that the reason why exchanges are not listing is they're playing this waiting game. They will take those coins. They want to sell them on other exchange. If they've received coins from a crowd loan, they actually hold those coins. And then they'll claim to their users that they've distributed the coins to them, but actually they don't have the coins anymore. And that's a big concern to us, that might be happening in the industry.
Wow. Because it is an unregulated market at the end of the day, and because it's unregulated.
And also they're not really being fair. If they're not distributing to their users and they're not making a big effort to distribute to their users, effectively the users are unaware that should already be holding their coins, and in that circumstance they would normally demand from the exchange that they list that coin so that they can sell it. But if they hold off actually distributing that, then the users are in a position where they don't know. They're left in limbo.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I totally agree. And it's insane. Let's just hope that they will make TNCs clearer. And one of the concerns I have personally with not having any centralized exchanges is the lack of liquidity on DEXs. I'm not sure when that's going to change. I'm hoping it will eventually, maybe in 2 years, maybe in 3 years. But for now, centralized exchanges are needed for that liquidity and for that volume. Because if you have volume, then people are not going to complain to say, well, look, I'm suffering a 20% slippage trying to buy or trying to sell, right? So, I mean, we don't want to get to a point where users are complaining because of that lack of liquidity on DEXs, which it is happening, unfortunately. So, I mean, centralized exchanges do play a role there, but they can also be an evil, right? When it comes to situations like these. Yeah. So way too much control, and it's not good. Now, I need to ask you one of the other questions, which may be tough on you, but I have asked everyone else this question, so I hope you are prepared. And this is in relation to funding. I know that you don't have any VCs behind you, right? Which is understandable. You chose to take the fair route for the community, is the pledge.
That's right.
Which beside the crowd loan. So I have to ask you, like, in terms of runway, in terms of the time frame, how long do you think you can sustain the full team before you have to say, guys, I'm sorry, we need to find a way to get that funding?
Well, we're at that stage at the moment where we're looking at options. You know, we've been, as I said earlier, we've been speaking internally with the other parachain leads, because they're more or less in the same position as everyone. Is that, you know, the market liquidity is drying up, so even the bigger projects are suffering from that perspective. And we're looking at options as to how we can perhaps drive some interest back into the Polkadot community and drive volume back into the Polkadot community. You know, sort of not directly answering your question, we have enough that we can continue for the rest of the year. What we won't be able to do without listing is expand our team, which was always the goal of this process. So that's kind of holding us back, to be honest, in terms of team growth. And team growth means the speed of delivery of what it is that we plan over the next year or so. But it's not an uncommon problem, and I think everybody's on the same page with this, is that we know that the parachains need to survive, because Polkadot survives if the parachains survive. It's not, although, you know, often it's sold on the basis of the parachains need Polkadot for security. That's true, they do, but Polkadot needs the parachains to survive, and that's a really fundamental thing that we have to get across. As a community, we need to work together to ensure that everybody who's winning slots on the flagship network, Polkadot, has got enough funds to run their network, and that they have got enough funds to continue marketing, to bring in new developers or whatever it is. Those things are really, really important.
Yeah. Now, I do have to ask you, let's assume that you get to a situation where you're not able to get those funds from VCs, assuming that's like your last resort and you have to take the VC route. And let's say you're not successful in that. Would you be considering grants from existing parachains and then to change your approach, rather than have the Totem Accounting parachain to maybe be an L2 on top of an existing parachain? Is that something that you could do, or is that not possible because of the infrastructure that you've got?
Well, I would say, first of all, that before we go to VCs necessarily, we would be looking at Treasury grants or Web3 Foundation grants of some kind, because, I mean, between them, they're sitting on nearly $1 billion worth of funds. So they should really be deploying that, in my opinion, effectively within the community. We would be looking internally within the community to you know, potentially fund other aspects to that. But you've touched on an idea that we've been discussing internally, literally in the last week. I'm not going to go into too many details, but we think that we have a solution which will allow the community to thrive and flourish with kind of internal investment, and that will bring developers and new ideas into the Polkadot community. That's the basic principle. How do we kind of kickstart interest in the Polkadot community beyond just developers, but to the point of I want to build a parachain in Polkadot or on Kusama or whatever it is. There needs to be an incentive beyond just the curiosity of the environment, and the environment being sort of a great piece of technology. And we think that we can propose something, and we will be proposing something within the next month, I would say. Initially, we're going to discuss it with Parity, but we're also going to discuss it internally with the roundtable of parachain leads to see whether there would be any interest in this. But hopefully it'll be something that's different. And as I said, sort of if we can have a decentralized form of investment that's going on, that's far more preferable than VCs. VCs will take your money, they'll dump it straight away. I mean, that's basically what it comes down to, and we don't want that for the community. Yeah, no, I love your direct answer there, straight to the point. It's very true. I mean, that's ultimately how it is. I mean, we may argue there may be some better VCs out there. Like, I know there's no such thing as a good VC, but there may be some VCs that might be like, we believe in this long term, we're going to hold long term because we really believe in the team's vision. Obviously, they would want to get their profit out, but maybe not like completely exit and move on to the next thing, as some VCs may do. So I would say that there may be some VCs that may be better than others. So at least there's some positive in that aspect. But yet, yeah, you're right. I mean, most of the time it's that, So
that's actually still like a time bomb. I mean, it's eventually they will have to sell.
Exactly.
And especially if they are running out of funds, then it's even more catastrophic.
Yeah. But I mean, if they do it in the next bull run, then you don't really feel it, because that's ultimately what has been, has been affecting the Polkadot ecosystem. It's that exit liquidity that retail has been faced with. It's like in a bear market, when VCs sell, or teams, or exchanges, then the issue is that the retail investor is the one that's suffering the most. Whereas if it happens in a bull market, you don't feel it, because there's so much demand that, things are just like, they're okay. Everyone is happy. Everyone is winning. You don't see the dark side of it, and you don't think of the dark side of it, but you think of it more when you get to the bear market. So that's the unfortunate event, that we have to put up with.
Just thanks very much for having us on. We've got a lot coming up, so just watch this space.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you coming on. And by the way, if you want to check out the links, you can find them in the description of this video, and also in the pinned comment for Totem Accounting. You can follow them on their socials as well. Thank you for watching. Till next time. Bye-bye.